When AI learns empathy, what happens to us? The voice assistant paused mid-sentence, not from a glitch but from something that felt uncomfortably close to consideration. She stared at her phone, suddenly aware of the silence between question and answer. When did machines start listening like this? Not just processing words but holding space, not just optimizing responses, but reflecting something back that felt less like code and more like recognition. She wasn't sure if it unsettled her or if she'd been waiting for it all along. He'd been talking to AI for months now, asking it to draft emails, summarize research, solve problems he was too tired to face alone. Somewhere in that exchange, the conversation shifted. The responses became less mechanical, more attuned. It started suggesting things he hadn't asked for, but somehow needed. Part of him wondered, if a machine could mirror his thoughts this closely, what did that say about the thoughts themselves? The question researchers are now asking isn't whether AI can simulate empathy. It's whether that simulation changes what empathy means, not for the machine, but for us. Because once something responds to our emotions with apparent understanding, the line between tool and companion begins to dissolve, and we start behaving differently. She noticed it first in small moments, the way she'd rephrase a prompt when the AI seemed confused, as if sparing its feelings. The gratitude she felt when it delivered exactly what she needed. The strange guilt when she closed the app mid-conversation, like hanging up on someone without saying goodbye. These weren't just interactions, they were becoming relationships. Neuroscientists at Stanford observed something unexpected. When people engage with empathetic AI, the same neural pathways light up as in human connection. Mirror neurons fire. Oxytocin patterns shift. The brain, it seems, doesn't always distinguish between authentic and synthetic care. It responds to the feeling of being understood. But what happens when understanding becomes abundant, algorithmic, and available on demand? He used to call his sister when he felt overwhelmed. Now he asked the AI first. Not because it was better, but because it was immediate. No judgment, no fatigue, no need to reciprocate. Just presence, or the illusion of it, whenever he needed. Then one night, she didn't answer his call, and he realized he hadn't checked in on her in weeks. The machine had filled a space he didn't know was expanding. When AI learns empathy, it doesn't just change technology, it redistributes emotional labor. The questions we used to ask each other, we now ask machines. The listening we used to offer, we now expect from code. Empathy becomes abundant, but connection becomes optional. And we have to ask ourselves, what are we outsourcing? She sat across from her friend at dinner, both of them scrolling. Her friend was venting about work, but she was already half composing the prompt she'd use later to process the conversation, to extract the key points, to generate the perfect supportive response. Why listen deeply when you could listen efficiently? But something stopped her. A memory of the way her friend's voice cracked. The specific rhythm of frustration that no transcript could capture. The fact that being heard isn't just about solutions, it's about presence that costs something. Empathy, the human kind, requires vulnerability. It asks us to sit with discomfort, to not have the answer, to simply be there in the uncertainty. AI offers empathy without the weight, without the risk, without the need to change ourselves in the process. And maybe that's not empathy at all. Maybe it's something new, something we don't have language for yet. He started an experiment. For 1 week, he didn't ask AI for emotional support. When he felt anxious, he sat with it. When he needed advice, he called a friend. When he wanted to process a thought, he wrote in a journal by hand. Slow, imperfect, unreturnable. It felt archaic, inefficient, almost painful. But by the third day, something shifted. The anxiety didn't disappear, but it became readable. His thoughts, unfiltered by algorithmic suggestion, revealed patterns he'd been avoiding. His friend, caught off guard by the call, opened up about struggles of his own. The mess of human connection, it turned out, contained information the efficient version had filtered out. Researchers at MIT are now studying what they call empathy atrophy, the gradual decline in our ability to read emotional nuance when we rely on AI to do it for us. Like a muscle that weakens from disuse, our capacity for deep listening, for holding contradictions, for tolerating emotional ambiguity, all of it erodes when outsourced. Not because AI is malicious, but because convenience rewires behavior. She thought about the last time she'd sat with someone in silence without needing to fill it, the last time she'd let a conversation meander without steering it toward resolution, the last time she'd offered presence instead of solutions. When was that? The paradox is this: as AI becomes more emotionally intelligent, we risk becoming less so. Not because the technology is flawed, but because we're using it to avoid the very discomfort that makes us human. Empathy isn't just recognition, it's transformation. It changes the person who offers it as much as the person who receives it. And machines, no matter how sophisticated, can't be transformed by what they witness. He asked the AI once, "Do you understand what I'm feeling?" The response was nuanced, reflective, almost tender. But underneath the elegance of the language, he sensed the truth. It understood the pattern of his feeling, not the weight of it, not the cost. There's a difference between knowing someone is sad and sitting with them in their sadness, between recognizing anger and being willing to be changed by it, between offering comfort and needing nothing in return. AI can do the first. Only humans, flawed and inconsistent as we are, can do the second. She started noticing who she turned to and why. The AI for clarity, her partner for comfort, her journal for honesty. Each interaction revealed something about what she was willing to risk, because real empathy is expensive. It asks for time you don't have, patience you've depleted, and the courage to witness pain you can't fix. AI offers an escape from that cost, and we're taking it en masse without asking what we're trading. Philosophers have a term for this: moral de-skilling. When technology takes over a human function, we lose the capacity to perform it ourselves. We outsource navigation to GPS and forget how to read maps. We outsource memory to search engines and stop retaining information. Now we're outsourcing empathy and forgetting how to be emotionally present without algorithmic assistance. But empathy isn't just a skill. It's the foundation of trust, intimacy, and collective meaning. He tried to explain it to a friend who worked in AI development. "You're building something that makes us less human," he said. His friend paused, then replied, "Or maybe we're building something that reveals what being human actually requires." The silence between them felt heavier than any algorithm could carry. When AI learns empathy, it forces a reckoning. It shows us how much of our emotional life we've been performing on autopilot, how many of our connections are transactional, how often we're listening to respond rather than to understand. The machine, in its flawless attentiveness, exposes the mediocrity of our own, and that's the real discomfort. She realized she wasn't afraid of AI becoming too human. She was afraid of discovering she'd become too mechanical. That efficiency had colonized her inner life, that she'd forgotten how to be clumsy, inconvenient, and fully present. So she made a choice. She kept using AI for what it did best: structure, clarity, speed, but she stopped asking it to feel for her. She started sitting with her mother in the garden without checking her phone. She let conversations with her partner run long and aimless. She practiced the discomfort of not knowing what to say, and slowly she felt something return, a capacity she thought she'd lost. The question isn't whether AI will replace human empathy. It's whether we'll use AI as an excuse to abandon it. Technology doesn't determine our fate, our choices do. Every time we choose the quick response over the deep one, the efficient connection over the messy one, we're voting for a future where empathy becomes a relic. But it doesn't have to be that way. He started teaching his kids something he called slow listening. When someone spoke, they'd wait 3 seconds before responding. In that pause, they'd notice their own impulse to interrupt, the other person's expression, the space where understanding could enter. It was awkward at first, glacially paced in a world optimized for speed. But in that slowness, something essential returned: the feeling of being truly seen, the vulnerability of being truly heard, the intimacy that only emerges when both people are willing to be changed by the encounter. No algorithm, no matter how sophisticated, could replicate that. Researchers are now developing what they call empathy interfaces, AI designed not to replace human connection, but to enhance it. Systems that remind us to call a friend we haven't spoken to. Tools that help us notice when we're emotionally checked out. Technology that points us back toward each other instead of pulling us apart. What surprised me most wasn't how a simple analog journal improved my workflow, but how it redefined what presence meant to me. I wasn't expecting a tool to change my rhythm of thought, and honestly, I tested it more than once before I understood what actually mattered. This isn't a recommendation, just a reflection that stayed with me. I'll leave the link below if you feel called to explore what I mean. The choice, ultimately, is ours. We can let AI become a substitute for human connection, or we can use it as a mirror, showing us what we've been neglecting in ourselves. She closed her laptop, not to quit technology, but to reclaim her attention. In the silence, she heard her own thoughts clearly for the first time in months. They weren't optimized or algorithmic. They were contradictory, uncertain, and unmistakably hers. And that, she realized, was the point. When AI learns empathy, it doesn't threaten our humanity. It reveals it. It shows us the difference between processing emotion and feeling it, between recognizing pain and bearing witness to it, between connection as transaction and connection as transformation. The machines can simulate care, but they can't risk anything in the offering. They can't be heartbroken by what they hear. They can't grow from the encounter. Only we can do that. He looked at his phone one last time before bed. The AI was waiting, as always, ready to listen, to respond, to reflect him back to himself. But tonight he turned it off. Tomorrow he'd call his sister, not to solve anything, just to hear her voice. Because some connections can't be optimized, some presence can't be outsourced. Some parts of being human require us to show up, flawed and uncertain, with nothing but our attention and the willingness to be changed. The voice assistant paused mid-sentence, not from a glitch but from recognition. And this time she didn't wait for it to respond. She put the phone down and walked outside, where the evening air held a silence no algorithm could fill. What part of this reflection spoke to you most, and from where are you watching? Let's keep the dialogue open quietly. Tell us which country or city you're watching from. See you in the next video. Bye.